What is going on, everybody? It is Alex coming back at you with another video, and today we are going to be giving you a breakdown of the top 10 interior defensive linemen in the 2023 NFL Draft. If you guys are new, feel free to stick around. You guys know how to use YouTube. Feel free to stay and join the community. All the links are also in the description, so feel free to join us there. Let's jump right into this. No need for a long introduction. Even with the Jalen Carter news, concerns, all that jazz, I think that, he still has the best talent in the class. It might also lend to showing you that this defensive line class is not nearly that good, which is also why in free agency you've been seeing some maybe higher price tags on defensive tackles, because not necessarily the most loaded class, but we'll still break down 10 pretty damn solid dudes who could probably all have at least some form of an impact on a roster. But yeah, Jalen Carter, he is still phenomenal, number one talent in the class. Inconsistencies, and then gaining 9 pounds within 13 days, that's really, really difficult. Up 23 pounds, if I'm not mistaken, from when he was there at Georgia. That's just a lot, and I know there's a lot going on. You guys can check out my other videos that I've done on that type of stuff, as well as my Twitter. Again, link in the description below. So I'm going to put that aside for now, because that's just going to be a long, laborious topic that it is what it is. It's already been said. I've already beaten it with a dead horse. But again, the talent is unbelievable. He was young. He had some great production when he was 19 years of age. So I do think that maybe the main issue is maturity. So I think that a spot where maybe he can go to is a spot where he didn't really run into too much trouble, and that was with his buddy Jordan Davis. I think that'd be a good spot for him. I think the Bears don't really have much to lose. They're not necessarily the best franchise right now anyway. So I think that they can end up taking him and be able to take an L, because I don't think anybody's going to blame them for trying to hit a home run with an elite talent. I just hope it doesn't end up being a Jamarcus Russell thing, but it is what it is. Gannon also was just with one of the best defensive interiors that we've seen in a hot minute there with the Eagles, who made it all the way to the Super Bowl. Warren Sapp also had some beef with his teammates, and he also had incredible talent. I think that could definitely lend as a pretty solid comp that I've heard of. But I don't think he makes it out of the top 10, even with these concerns, and I hope to God his pro day is different. Next, we got Adebawore, because I still cannot say his first name. Every single time I default to the way that I said it the first time, which is incorrect. So I am going to take a bow out on this one. But Adebawore is how you're supposed to say the last name. He lit up the combine, 4.49 at 282 pounds. We're talking about Kalijah Canty in the 4.67 range, and we're like, holy shit, this guy's literally, I think, bigger than him by a pound and ran almost 1.5 tenths of a second faster. So, he's an athletic freak. Doesn't really pop off on tape that way, but who knows? Maybe he really worked on himself in the offseason. I don't think Northwestern is the premier program, so I'm sure that maybe there's some stuff that he learned in the offseason in terms of being able to find a little bit more juice and a little bit more explosiveness in his body. And if that's the case, awesome. I always love getting credit where credit is due. That's why he's number 2 on my list. A lot of people might say he's a pure edge rusher. That 282 frame, I thought it was more of a tweener, so that's why I put him in with this list, to show you guys a little bit more of the edge rushers, and honestly the defensive interior class is a little bit mid, so it is nice to be able to have some more guys to occupy this list. But 34-inch arms with that potential speed is ridiculous. He got moved around actually quite a bit in the Senior Bowl by guys like Cody Mauch in the run game. A little bit concerned about that, but I think he can definitely make a bounce back. Again, you could use him as an end, or you can use him as an interior. So there are plenty of teams that could, be open to both of those ideas. Next, we got Kalijah Canty. So I was right. He's 1 inch shorter, 1 pound lighter than Adebawore. He is awesome. I really do like him. I think he's very similar to Milton Williams in the upside and in terms of the frame aspect. He is someone who's extremely bursty. He pops off on tape. Just one of those guys who, he's a penetrator. Like, you talk about CJ Stroud being a ball placement specialist. This guy is a penetration specialist. He blows up 1 inch of room into probably a yard of room. Does a great job of being able to make the most out of very little. So good for him. And he is very comfortable with that athleticism. I was talking about Adebawore. He didn't seem to necessarily use it, his athleticism, the way that Canty does. I really do think that Canty is comfortable playing the way that he's supposed to at that size. So glad to see that. 30-inch arms. That's a big reason why he's number 3 and not number 2. Also, technically, he is number 2 defensive tackle, but it is what it is. But yeah, again, just a tweener. That's just the issue when you're 280 pounds. You're not going to be a pure guy who can stick up in the nose. You're going to be a 3-tack. So hopefully that doesn't get too much in the way, but you'll see these dream fits are teams that are looking for somebody to maybe slot in one last final guy where he can just play more of a specific role rather than an overall. Next, we got Brian Breezy, who could be higher on this list, but when it comes to a 30% missed tackle rate, over 30, as well as just kind of not understanding what the hell is going on when he's like not engaged with somebody, it's going to drop you down a bit. If without those two things, if he understood what was going on around the field, that field awareness were better, or if he just ended up tackling not like a bum, then he would actually end up being probably interior defensive lineman too. He's a block shedding specialist. He knows how to get off blocks, but you just have to make something when you're out of the block. You got to be able to know where the ball is to make a play. And I didn't see that. Very similar to Perrion Winfrey last year. I love Perrion's talent, but him processing where the ball is was his biggest downfall. Very similar in terms of that mindset for Breezy. But I mean, you see it, 6'5", 300. He also has really solid length. He is a very solid athlete. I just think that if he goes to a spot where either he can be in a more solidified role, or if he could have an amazing mentor, that is going to be the best spot for him. And I do think the Steelers, as much as I hate it, I'm a Steelers fan, I think that's a really good spot for him. If he's there at 33, you snag him up instantly. And now that's something that you develop for the long run. I think guys that we'll talk about probably next with Keanu Benton, those guys are not necessarily those guys that you're trying to develop into a superstar. You're just excited to use them for what they are. Breezy, I think, has that upside to be one of those superstars, but he has to be in the right situation. And I think a lot of people are banking too heavily on the upside to not acknowledge the fact that there is a lot to work on. And he is not really on the field for the majority of the snaps anyway. That's another big concern, but I do think that he will end up being successful in the right environment. Everything's about fit. That's why all these grades, they're all preliminary on where they should go. It's why I have dream fits. Sometimes good players fall and end up getting snagged by the team that's best for them. And it might be like crazy to think that the Cardinals in the second round could get him, but it's not impossible. So I just wanted to throw that in there. I don't really have a comparison for him, and I'm not going to BS you with a comparison. I know that a lot of people like to force them. I'm definitely not one of those. But speaking of Keanu Benton, he is a very talented player, someone who I didn't like coming into the year because he just did not look comfortable in his own body. He totally revamped it too. You could see it. Physiologically, he looks different, and that's awesome. I'm very happy to see someone work on themselves physically as well as technically. So he's able to beat blocks so much better. You can't put this guy one-on-one. He's 310 pounds. He's able to push the pocket. Like, he's done a great job. And he showed it at the Senior Bowl as well. A lot of respect for Keanu Benton. I'm very excited to say that I was wrong at the start of the year. That's something about me. I don't care about being wrong in the first place. I'll tell you guys my honest opinion, but in the end, I'm more than willing to give someone a second chance and give them the respect that they deserve. But overall, another guy that just can't really, he gets lost in the backfield, just doesn't really seem to know what's going on past getting past the block. So another spot where I think, there's going to be a lot of repeat teams on here for sure. Teams are just looking to slot one dude in for the long run. And Wisconsin is a Steelers team. Like, it's just where the Steelers grab their interior defensive linemen, like Loudermilk. So I do think it's a pretty logical idea to say they'll go back that way. Next is Mozzie Smith, number 1 on Bruce Feldman's Freaks list at that former 340-pound frame, now 323-pound frame. He doesn't actually use it that well. Versus Steve Avila, he got absolutely moved. And that was a big reason why TCU was able to probably win, is because they had forms of dominance on the offensive and defensive lines that they really shouldn't have. It shouldn't have been remotely close. Like, Michigan's talent level is way beyond the talent level of TCU's line. And Mozzie just got moved, and it was really weird. So I was talking about how Kalijah is comfortable in his frame. I don't think Mozzie is. I really don't. But he is a freak. He has a great size, and he does not give up. He is relentless. I just think there's a lot of inconsistencies to him, and, it does scare me. And you'll see the grades. This is not in numerical order, and I don't want it to be that way. I like my numerical descriptions of the players to be an objective point of view, because it is good. but nothing's perfect. Just because you get a 15 out of 15 in one category versus a 5 out of 15 in another doesn't mean that a person who's 12 and 12 is going to be any better or worse. So I'm going to give the nod to the player who I feel more comfortable with, but sometimes, most of the time, the grades do end up being being very reflective of it. And in time, of course, this is pretty much year 2 of having a grading scale. In time, everything will be able to be polished out, and then we'll understand a little bit more about what the grading system should perfectly be. If you guys are curious about how I grade players, feel free to hit me a DM over in Discord, and I will be able to show you guys, because I'm not afraid of hiding. I don't like hiding my shit, because not very fun. But Karl Brooks is next, someone who I love a lot. It does show you that when I do add in these guys who are kind of tweeners between, like, because I know Karl Brooks is used as an edge rusher. So basically guys who are used as an edge rusher at that size, they're going to look really good, but they're probably kicked to the inside. It does make the class a lot better on paper, but it's not just edge rushers and interiors. That's just not the case. There's guys who place multiple roles in each different role, but Karl, he's just another guy who needs a little bit of development. He is somebody who is extremely underrated by the NFL, at least. You know, I have him top 150 just because he wasn't invited to the combine. And, like, that's just weird. That's, like, really weird. I don't get that part. But, you know, it is what it is. He is somebody who's able to get off blocks. He reminded me a lot of Jerzon Newton, who I was a big fan of. Maybe not nearly close to the dominance that Jerzon had. And stay tuned next year for Jerzon Newton season. I'm excited for that. But he definitely had some more of that hand-fighting technique that I was looking for. So good job for Karl Brooks. But yeah, tackling, processing, another guy where you get in the backfield, not exactly 100% sure where the balls are going to be. And then, you know, tackling seems to be an Achilles heel of a lot of defensive players. And it makes sense. I mean, half of the time you're probably trying to reach into a hole, reach into a gap in order to, you know, disrupt the flow of the offense. So I can understand it there. Keandre Coburn, he's somebody who's just a big athletic guy. I think he's the better version of Siaki Ika. Just a dude who's pretty much a wall of mass that actually moves really well for it. Besides that, I don't think he has many special traits. He's not really necessarily a good pass rusher, and he's not the best at run stuffing, but he does fill a hole. And he also is, he's athletic. And that's good enough tools to work with, especially on day 3. If I'm looking at this and I'm a team like Seattle that's looking for a potential guy to just plug up the interior, this is a dude worth taking. And we already know that Marquand McCall is on the Panthers, and, you know, it's obviously just value a dude who can just eat space. And I hope that you don't spend a higher pick on someone like Siaki Ika. This guy is way better value. But, you know, still, good size, good mobility. That's going to get you a day 3 grade. You will get drafted at that size. Gerald Daxter, man, I'm praying to God he gets back up the ranking list, because he was my interior 2 starting out the year, and he should remain that way if he hits his ceiling. He showed that he was able to work on himself in the offseason. An incredible athlete, you know, 310 pounds. I didn't expect that. And he still tested out like he was 280. So great for Gervin. It's just weird what happened last year. He was my number 14, if not my number 12 player in the class. I fell in love with Gerald Daxter. But just something turned off during the year, and he just didn't want to play very hard anymore. He didn't engage blockers anymore, and it was so confusing, and it was a big pain, especially to myself, because that was somebody who I was like, okay, this might be his season. I came in before I even studied him. I'm like, okay, this guy was a top prospect coming out of high school, you know? And, you know, he actually had 25 pressures the year before, which was good. In 2020, it was 25 pressures. But it's like, 2021, he did a good job. Or excuse me, 2021, he had 25 pressures. But like in 2022, it was not it. And that's really, really sad. But I do think that potential's in there. And maybe there's something going on in Florida. I don't know the whole story. But, you know, there were guys like even Brenton Cox that are just like, dude, get me the hell out of here. And I'm hoping that's the case. If it is, and maybe they're just like kind of being mistreated, maybe I'll be boosting him back up. But until more information comes out, it is unfortunate. But I gotta just admit, when a player doesn't play on the field, I'm going to drop him. And then last but not least, Jacqueline Roy. Somebody who was mocked in the first rounds of starting out the year, never took that step. You know, he's a good pass rushing dude who's kind of comfortable in his frame, but, you know, when it comes to inconsistencies, when it comes to, he doesn't even use his length very well, which is interesting, because most of the guys, I actually don't tend to knock him on their length usage, which is the arm length. He definitely is somebody where like you'll have, let's just say 32 inches of arm length, but only engages with 20 of it because you pretty much just shove your whole entire body into somebody else. I also don't think he gets off blocks very well, but he does. I mean, you guys see it. At least he's a solid tackler. It's kind of hard to say that for most of these players on the defensive interior. But that is going to be the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know who should have been on this list. See you guys on the far side. Peace.